All right. Well, there might be a few more people joining as we speak, but let's get started. Welcome again. My name is Zoe Siegel, and I am the Director of Climate Resilience here at Greenbelt Alliance. Thanks for joining today. This is a series highlighting climate leaders working on issues related to making our world more resilient. In case this is your first time joining us, Greenbelt Alliance is a nonprofit organization based in the San Francisco Bay Area, and our mission is to educate, advocate, and collaborate to make the Bay Area's lands and communities more resilient to a changing climate. Before we start, I'd like to thank all of you for making the time to join our conversation today. I know there's a lot going on. There's, an infinite amount of Zoom fatigue, and it's a beautiful day. So we really appreciate that this is a time for you to come and learn from us. And we hope that you can learn something fun today. Joining me today is Manisha Rattu, the co-founder and Climate Action and Just Development campaign lead at Pittsburg Youth Action, a BIPOC youth grassroots organization in her hometown of Pittsburgh. This is a really exciting moment for Contra Costa County, including Pittsburgh. Currently, 8 of the 19 cities across the county are updating their general plans. For those wondering, what is a general plan? A general plan is a guiding policy document for the economic, social, and physical development of that city. It's only updated every 20 to 30 years. So the fact that this many cities across the county are updating right now means it's a really critical time to take action. And Pittsburgh is one of those cities. And Manisha and I met through this advocacy process as we were both advocating, as both Greenbelt Alliance and Pittsburgh Youth Action have been advocating to make sure that this general plan update prioritizes action on climate hazards like flooding, wildfire, and prioritizes environmental justice throughout the document and through the process itself. There are so many incredible advocates across Contra Costa County, but there are many fewer youth organizing around environment and environmental justice issues, and even fewer advocates in the eastern part of the county. Manisha and Pittsburgh Youth Action overall are filling a critical need for youth activism, and this is very apparent. Every time Manisha and I are in a meeting together, all of the other older activists immediately light up when Manisha speaks, and I am so excited for all of you to also light up when she's speaking today. Welcome again, Manisha. Why don't we start with you, telling us a little bit more about yourself, where you grew up, and how you started taking an interest in environmental justice work.
Thank you so much, Zoe, and thank you all for joining today. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Manisha Rattu. I use she, her pronouns. I actually grew up in Pittsburgh my whole life. My family is a Punjabi immigrant family, and I was actually one of the first in my family to be born in the US. I grew up with parents who were, constantly working, trying to support us. And I was really lucky to also be surrounded by a lot of extended family most of whom all live in Pittsburgh today. And so Pittsburgh has been home and is home and will likely be home for many, many years to come. I grew up, spending time playing outside here, and so really care about this community. After high school, I actually went on to pursue my undergrad in Earth Systems and Ethnic Studies at Stanford, which I completed in 2019. And then right after that, I began my master's also in Earth Systems, which I finished last June. As Zoe mentioned, I work as a consultant, helping actually city sustainability staff and climate challenge staff on the American Cities Climate Challenge, help them work with cities to better understand how to connect climate and equity goals, either through training modules, webinars, framework documents, and so much more. So my background in EJ actually began in high school. I distinctly remember my 9th grade biology teacher, Miss Moreno, asking us, the entire class, she asked us, have you ever wondered why all these toxic polluting industries are near communities of color like ours? And as a freshman, I didn't really answer that question. I didn't really care that much. But 2 years later, I really got to answering that question when the Westpac project was proposed in Pittsburgh. So Westpac was proposed in 2012, but it didn't get public attention until 2013, when the citizens of Pittsburgh started organizing against it. And so this project, which some of you may have heard of, or intended to bring in about 100,000 barrels of crude oil by ship and rail every single day into Pittsburgh, and storing it in Pittsburgh in these old PG&E tankers that we have on the Delta front. And then they wanted to ship the oil to Richmond to get refined. And so it was this huge, massive like issue that was going to impact most of the East County. And so I got looped into it by my AP physics teacher. So I spent a lot of time with her after school, going to office hours. And then one day she was like, I'm going to this community meeting. And I was like, okay, great, have fun. I don't really, too busy with your AP physics homework to, join you. But after a while, I got curious. I was like, why do you keep going to these meetings? Like, one, they're super late at night, and two, you don't even live in Pittsburgh. And she really just sat down and explained to me what crude oil was, and she encouraged me to join her at one of these community meetings. And I was like, you know what? I respect you. I think what you care about is important, and so I joined her. And honestly, that meeting was an instant sort of moment that really shaped the trajectory of all the actions I've been a part of since then. At that meeting, I was surrounded by organizers, climate advocates, and also concerned citizens. And what was really amazing was that even though I was 16 at that time, I wasn't treated like a child. I was treated as someone who had a voice, who had something to say, and who should be able to voice those things. So that really motivated me to go back to my high school and talk to my friends and peers, and we started doing our own organizing efforts. We circulated petitions, we did classroom presentations, we started packing the room at city council meetings, we joined community rallies, and we actually even organized our very own at the high school. And eventually, we started doing our own air monitoring sampling because our air monitor was decommissioned, and we actually presented that to the Bay Area Air Quality Management District. And so over the course of 2 years, eventually in 2015, the project was indefinitely terminated. And Westpac said that it was because of business reasons, but we really think that it was because of the youth movement, and also the community organizing that forestalled the project long enough for it to no longer be profitable for Westpac. And so it's a long story, but that's sort of my background, and really it's shaped how I approach climate and EJ work. I'll pause there.
Oh, that's incredible that you guys were able to successfully, rally together, and whether or not it was, and presumably it really was based upon your actions. And that's such a really, pivotal moment. And really, it's the youth action is so critical, and it's so amazing that, you had this mentor like this physics teacher who really, treated you like an equal, guided you through this process, and brought you to, to this meeting where you were greeted by all of these other people. I think that's really amazing. I guess not everybody is fortunate enough to have, a mentor kind of guiding or helping to mobilize. And I'm curious, what else mobilizes youth for activism and environmental justice issues, do you think?
Yeah, I think a big part of the youth mobilization is actually national social issues that we're seeing. Because of social media, there's actually been this new age of digital organizing that is actually quite powerful and very, very accessible. We saw this with Standing Rock, we saw this with a number of movements. And I think that our youth are, they're really critical of what's happening nationally, and really tuned into that. And I think that in addition to that, there's also sort of an intergenerational responsibility. I remember when we were doing our Westpac organizing and we were speaking to city council members, oftentimes these students who were, high schoolers, they were teenagers, oftentimes they talked about a concern for the future of their siblings, the future of their cousins, and the future of future children that they hope to one day have. And so there is this huge intergenerational responsibility for protecting the environment and making sure further harm is not done. And I think that another sort of mobilization piece for youth, especially youth of color, is that a lot of it is fueled by personal proximity to the issues. So a lot of us, we're next to refineries, or we've had family members who have suffered because of these toxins. And so our activism is very much personal. And I think that motivates a lot of youth. And I think that inspiring piece of that is that there's a lot of youth who have a commitment to a new vision and a new future, and that vision shifts away from extractive economies towards communities of care. And I think that is also something that really mobilizes a lot of young people within the movement.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's been so inspiring over the last, year or so, watching, youth mobilizing, really expand. And I think, movements like the Sunrise Movement are, just like really incredible and, really essential for taking the, climate action that we need to take. But I think, there is oftentimes, less of a focus on local issues. And I think that's why, an organization like Pittsburgh Youth Action is so important. And I'm curious, what exactly, how did Pittsburgh Youth Action form, and what exactly do you guys do?
Yeah, we formed in June of 2020, so actually about a year ago. We formed actually in response to the police violence we were seeing last summer all across the nation. What we saw was that our city's budget, Pittsburgh City's budget, general fund budget, was predominantly going to police spending, and hardly any of it was allocated toward youth services and opportunities. And so we started by advocating a lot for public safety that doesn't cause further violence and harm against our communities, that provides sort of mental health resources and also uplifts our youth. And so that's how we sort of started, but over the year, we've really shifted and reoriented some of our campaigns. But I think two of the main things that we do as an organization is a lot of capacity building and then advocacy. So what we try to do is we make information accessible for the community, either through hosting forums for discussion, condensing city council meetings or like decisions that they pass, really making it accessible for people to get involved with local government. We also then advocate within the city, and we try to help others, move from this digital information sharing to engaging in public comments, or, eventually one day joining public city council meetings in person. And so that capacity building and advocacy are two big pieces. This year, we've actually shifted our campaigns around, and I'm the climate action and just development campaign lead, so I'm able to actually focus a little bit more on the climate projects. So we've been tracking projects like Faria, which is intending to develop in the hills of Pittsburgh and actually expanding the city's boundary past its existing lines. And there's a lot of harm to both the environment that's going to be caused with, habitats and just, destruction of the hills. It's also a huge wildfire prone area. And then on top of it, we're also increasing traffic congestion. And we're already seeing a lot of pollutants, especially PM 2.5 from vehicles, that's causing a lot of harm to community members' health. And so projects like these are resulting in a lot of, million-dollar developments that, one, are going to cause a lot of displacement, harm the environment, and also harm our communities. And so we've been trying to work to, one part of it is the defense, where we're trying to push back on some of these projects, but we're also trying to work on the offensive. What is the kind of development we do want to see? What does that look like? And so we've been trying to envision that and try to share that with the city, and then work with them to hopefully create some sort of policy actions. Yeah, that's a quick recap.
Yeah, absolutely. And, I and Green Above Lines have also been, we were working to oppose the, the terrible Faria development. And, I think, what you were describing, sort of being reactive and proactive, is so important these days, because we can take the steps necessary to oppose development. But, when we're being proactive and getting involved in, processes like the general plan, we can make sure that terrible developments like the Faria development that are going to, jeopardize our, housing and climate and, equity issues for the next, few decades, really won't happen again, because they won't be planned in the general plan. So that's just, another plug for everyone who's listening in to, get involved, either if you live in Pittsburgh, get involved in this general plan process, or whatever city you live in, look up your general plan process and get engaged. Because I think, another thing that Manisha and I have seen is that there's just not enough people, engaged in this process. And I think, really the capacity building that Pittsburgh Youth Action is doing is really critical to making sure that more and more people have a voice in these processes. And then, so, as we know, climate change is exacerbating the injustices that frontline communities face, which is making climate adaptation even more essential. As you're following the general plan process, or just, in Pittsburgh more broadly, what are some of the key equity challenges that Pittsburgh is facing?
Yeah, I think that there's a number of issues, but I think one big thing that comes to mind is just rising housing costs and displacement. It's difficult for these communities to talk about climate when they're not able to afford housing, or they're being forced to move elsewhere because of the rising costs. And so I think that's a huge challenge that I think that climate policy can help, make sure that we're developing in an equitable way. We're making sure that there's clean housing available for existing residents, rather than multi-million-dollar homes in our hills that aren't even gonna go to our community. I think in addition to that, we're seeing just heat waves, like massive heat waves, like the one in the Pacific Northwest right now, and those are causing a lot of energy burden. There's homes here that may not be adequately fitted with the right air conditioning or things like that, or people just can't pay to turn on the AC. And so with more and more kids working, taking school from home, and people spending more time indoors, that's a huge health risk as well. And I think that a few other issues that I just wanted to name are that there's a need for family sustaining jobs. There is also a challenge with police violence, increasing health issues, limited opportunities for social mobility under education, lack of green space and wellness opportunities, as well as just the high emissions related to the refineries and vehicles and traffic, leading to those health issues that I mentioned.
Yeah, that's a lot. And those are not, those are things that, Pittsburgh may be facing, but those are also, challenges that as a region, we're trying to address. And I think, every city is addressing them kind of on a city by city level. And then there's, some elements that are kind of being thought about at a regional scale, like, how much housing should be built is through the regional housing needs process. But yeah, I think it's really critical that Pittsburgh, builds more climate smart housing, denser housing in existing communities, to stop the sprawl and stop projects like Faria, and so that we can, preserve the remaining open spaces, both for climate benefits and, wellness opportunities. And yeah, I'm also, I think the, related to increasing health opportunities, I think, thinking about a just transition and how we can, equitably do that. It's been really inspiring, at least across the county overall, that everybody, or certain people, are beginning to, really think about how we can address a lot of these issues. But, there's also all of these issues are so interconnected. And I think oftentimes as activists, we sort of get siloed into, I focus on this one specific thing. And I think it's really great that you and Pittsburgh Youth Action are really taking this comprehensive approach and are, addressing climate issues and, police violence and health, because, these are all connected. And in order to create, healthy, resilient communities, we need to really, think comprehensively. But, narrowing the scope a little bit, we've been, working together on the Pittsburgh General Plan. We've attended a number of meetings, and I know you've had, significantly more interaction with some of the, elected officials and city staff about this process. And I'm curious what your sense of, how the process is going. I know we've talked about this before, but, and like, what do you think needs to be changed or implemented?
Yeah, definitely. I think that we've had a few interfacings with the city staff and the city council around the general plan update process. And I think that, there's some things that they're trying to do well, but I still think that there are a few issues that need to be resolved in the entire general plan process update. I think that EJ, so environmental justice, equity, resilience, those are not priorities that are explicitly named in this general plan process. I think that those need to be named, not implied as we've seen being suggested in these meetings. I also think that there's a lack of accessibility to these processes. The information that the city is putting out for soliciting community feedback is really challenging to understand. So someone like me who, looks at documents like these and kind of has a grasp of them, was struggling. I was struggling to understand this land use alternatives report that the city had created. And then they were asking us to fill out a survey, an extensive survey, deciding between, okay, based on this report that you read, do you want more housing or do you want more jobs in this little area in the city? And I talked to Zoe about this. I was like, well, how can we decide that when that area is actually near the waterfront, is potentially a flood zone? And so you're asking us to make a decision without the full information. And then on top of it, it's challenging to access. And so there's just a lot of issues that I think need to be worked out. And I think there's also a lack of transparency. It's not always clear how the information is going to be used. And I think that's why, in addition to wearing my community organizer hat, I also wear my consultant hat. And I try to share with them, with the city and city staff, how they can better engage with the community, how they can do equitable community engagement. Because these issues of lack of accessibility, lack of transparency are going to continue until they define how they are going to equitably engage with the community. If the city, worked well with the community and like they were always, in touch with us, they would know that the surveys were inaccessible from the get-go, and they would have done a better job of designing them rather than sort of sending them out into the world, asking us what we think, hearing our feedback and saying, okay, you know what, maybe next time we'll fix that. That's not the way that the process should be done. Really, the community should be there from the forefront. And one community engagement framework that I really enjoy using is the spectrum of community engagement to ownership by one of my mentors, Rosa Gonzalez. I'll drop that in the chat for you all to see. But basically, this tool shows you how cities can engage with the community, and it shows a spectrum. So you can either ignore the community, you can inform them. So you can say, here's X, Y, and Z we're working on. That's it. You can consult them. Here's X, Y, and Z. What do you think? And eventually, there's this space where we want to get to, which is collaboration, which is deep participation. And deep democracy is really what it is where the community is really setting the priorities and the city is helping translate those into the policies and actions that are going to come forward. So I think that there's still a long way to go with Pittsburgh. The city staff are, they're some of them are really wonderful, and they're definitely very overworked, and I'm really appreciative of the work, all the efforts they're putting forward. But I'm only seeing a few staff who are committing to these principles. With different staff members on different pages, it's hard to see an orchestrated shift in the city's engagement with the community. And as a result, policies and efforts like the general plan update process will struggle. And so that's why I try to, help them, bring them along, but also, push them as a community organizer on what some of our principles and guidelines are.
Yeah, and I think, obviously I agree with everything you're saying. I think that that framework is really great. And, we do want to work towards, a level of collaboration and really, more meaningful and deep involvement than, the process in Pittsburgh is currently, it's currently happening. And, I think first of all, the environmental justice should never be implied. And that was, absolutely outrageous that was something that was told to us in one of those meetings. And I think, it's critical to embed environmental justice in the general plan itself, and then also in the process and in the, making sure that the process is, transparent and equitable. And in that, that survey that you were discussing, that it's, really easily digestible, and that all of the information is presented so that people can make a more informed decision. And I think exactly what you were saying, that, was not the case. But, I am hopeful that there are some good seeds in the city, and that, there does seem to be, they were receptive to some of our feedback. And I am still, cautiously optimistic that some great things can still happen. But another plug for those of you who live in Pittsburgh, there's still time to weigh in. The general plan process is not over. So after this, reach out to Manisha or myself to learn more about how you can get involved, or what stage we are at. And then thinking, zooming out a little bit outside of Pittsburgh, Pittsburgh Youth Action is a youth-led environmental justice organization, but you are, working with activists of all ages and, playing this essential role, but, we're all really working together. And, what's the role that, younger environmentalists play, and how do you interact with the older generation? As I'm saying this question out loud, I guess, I don't know where I fit into that. Like I appreciate the younger generation, but I'm not sure if I want to qualify myself as part of the older generation. But nevertheless, I think it's really important that, the people that activists of all ages are coming together, and I'm curious about what you think sort of the role of the younger environmentalists play.
Yeah, we've had a lot of sort of older folks join our town halls or interface with us online, and we always welcome it because there's a lot of knowledge that they hold that we can truly learn from. At the same time, I think it's also important for us to share our new visions with them, as there have been a lot of shifts over the years. And I guess like the point I want to make is that traditional environmentalism and mainstream environmental orgs really centered emissions reductions. They centered protecting wild spaces and green spaces and saving polar bears as like the main call to action. And all that's so important, but climate goals today also need to be accompanied with co-equal equity goals. So if you're a policy designer, policy designers need to ask themselves, how is this climate policy advancing health or job opportunities or reducing energy burdens for communities of color? So when entire communities don't have access to clean water, are being subject to police violence, or are forced to make a decision between putting food on the table or paying their electricity bill, then it's hard to expect them to show up for just climate issues when they're fighting for their own survival. And so our climate movement must be intersectional. And it is frontline communities and youth who are really driving that work forward. And so I think it's really important for older generations. And I'm thinking of mostly, some of our elders and who were part of traditional mainstream environmental organizations or part of that generation, to really support this new vision and to be open to learning and to make space for these conversations. And I've definitely seen many amazing people who have done that. I've seen people who haven't. And so I just really encourage everyone to continue to like lean on each other, learn from each other, and make space for dialogue.
Yeah, absolutely. And I don't know how this happened. 30 minutes goes by so fast. And somehow we are, at time, but I really like to, end these conversations on an inspiring note, not to say that all of this wasn't inspiring, because I truly think it is. But, what inspires you about the future of Pittsburgh?
Yeah, I think what inspires me is the fact that I know that a just and community-centered future is possible. And I know that Pittsburgh is home to some incredible, innovative, and passionate individuals and young people who are going to continue to fight for that future. So I like to think about, what my vision is. And when I look toward my vision for the future of Pittsburgh, I'm excited to see a place that is affordable to live, work, and play. The air is clean, the food is fresh, and the streets are walkable. Children get to grow up as children and pursue their passions. Community gardens bring people from all walks of life together. Participating in government isn't a chore, it's a cheerful duty, and green spaces are abundant. And I know we can get there, and I know some people who are going to help us get there and are helping us get there right now. So I'm inspired, and I'm ready to keep connecting with others and to keep doing this work.
Yeah, and we at Greenbelt Alliance definitely share that vision, and very much look forward to working with you to realize that for Pittsburgh and Contra Costa County, and the Bay Area overall. I wish we had even more time to talk, but we are out of time. I really appreciate that you took the time to join us today, and for everyone who's listening in, thank you so much for attending. This talk is recorded and will be available on our YouTube channel. And, the work we do to protect the Bay Area's natural and working lands while also creating thriving communities is really made possible by people like you. So if you, if you are able to, please donate. And you can do that securely on our website at greenbelt.org/donate. And if you'd like to learn more about Greenbelt Alliance, please check out our website. And if you'd like to learn more about Pittsburgh Youth Action, please check out their website. And I believe all of those links are in the chat. And yeah, please stay in touch, connect with both Manisha or myself